Part 1, The Perfect Life. Lena Thompson sat by the kitchen window, sipping her coffee as the soft morning light filtered through the blinds. The house was quiet, save for the hum of the refrigerator and the faint chirp of birds outside. It was one of those peaceful mornings that felt like a snapshot of perfection, a life she had built over the last 10 years with her husband, Michael, and their 2 children. Her life, on the surface, looked like something out of a magazine. She had the house in the suburbs, the husband who loved her, the kids who made her laugh every day, and a career that allowed her to balance it all. Michael worked as a financial advisor, and Lena had a well-established position as a marketing director at a growing company. They had managed to carve out their little slice of happiness, and Lena couldn't have been more grateful for it. The kids, Ethan and Lily, were still asleep upstairs, and Michael was already off to the gym for his usual morning workout. He'd been in a bit of a routine lately, waking up earlier than usual, hitting the gym before work, and returning home in time to have breakfast with the family. Lena loved their routine, how they had settled into this rhythm of life after a decade of marriage. They had met when Lena was 27, at a mutual friend's party. Michael had been charming, his smile warm and infectious. They hit it off instantly. Their relationship moved quickly, and by the time Lena was 30, they were married. They had always been the couple that others admired, inseparable, always laughing, always in sync. Their marriage had weathered the usual challenges, juggling work, raising children, and maintaining a balanced relationship. But it was the kind of marriage people envied, solid, predictable, and full of love. Today felt like one of those mornings where everything was perfect. Lena was content, happy even, with everything falling into place. She was getting ready for an important meeting at work, where she was going to pitch a new campaign for a major client. As she finished her coffee, her phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. A text from Michael flashed across the screen. "Hey, I'm going to be late today. Something came up at work. See you later." Lena felt a pang of disappointment. They had planned to have breakfast together this morning, but she brushed it off. Michael's work was demanding, and she understood. She quickly typed a reply, "No worries. Hope everything's okay. Love you." Then, with a sigh, she put her phone down and started getting ready for her day. It was moments like this that made her appreciate their life, the small, ordinary things that built a strong foundation. But what Lena didn't know, what Michael had been hiding from her for years, was that the very foundation of their perfect life was built on a secret so devastating that it would change everything. As the day wore on, Lena's meeting went well. Her pitch was successful, and she was praised for her ideas. She felt accomplished, but a subtle unease gnawed at her. Michael's text had been brief, and she hadn't heard from him since. It wasn't unusual for him to be caught up at work, but today there was something different about it. The feeling was fleeting, and she quickly dismissed it. It wasn't until later that evening that the world as she knew it would begin to crumble. Part 2, The Discovery. The evening arrived, and the house was bustling with energy. The kids had returned from their playdates, and Michael had just walked in, his gym bag slung over his shoulder. His usual grin was absent, replaced by a distant look that Lena couldn't quite place. She tried not to think too much about it. Perhaps he was just tired from his day. After a quick dinner with the family, Michael excused himself to answer some emails, retreating to the study. Lena cleaned up the dishes and put the kids to bed. As she moved around the house, she noticed Michael's phone lying on the kitchen counter. The screen was lit up, and a message notification from an unknown number caught her eye. It was unusual for him to leave his phone unattended, especially with so many messages. The curiosity bubbled up within her. She'd never been one to snoop, and she trusted Michael completely. But something about that message stirred a strange feeling of unease in her stomach. She hesitated for a moment, her heart racing. It could be nothing, just a work message or a quick check-in from a friend. But as she stood there, the phone seemed to beckon her, urging her to take a look. Without thinking much further, Lena reached for the phone. It was unlocked. Michael never bothered to use a password or a lock screen. She swiped across the screen, and the message opened. "I miss you so much. Can't wait to see you tonight. I'll be there at 8. Lena's stomach twisted. She knew that name. Samantha. The name had come up before, in passing, but never as anything more than an acquaintance of Michael's. But the words in the text, the intimacy between them, sent an icy chill down her spine. Her fingers trembled as she read it again, her mind racing. The rest of the message was more of the same, flirtations, promises of closeness. It wasn't a work message. It wasn't just a casual friend. It was something else, something Lena had never expected to find. She stood frozen, her breath shallow, her mind processing the reality of what she was reading. Her world felt like it was shifting beneath her feet. She wasn't sure how long she stood there, but the sound of Michael's footsteps approaching the kitchen broke her trance. She quickly placed the phone back on the counter, her pulse pounding in her ears. Michael entered, his usual easy smile back in place. "Hey, everything okay?" he asked, brushing past her to grab a glass of water. Lena tried to keep her voice steady, but it cracked slightly as she responded, "Yeah, just finishing up here." Michael didn't seem to notice the tension in the air. He chatted with her about his day, unaware that his words were falling on deaf ears. Lena couldn't focus. Her thoughts were consumed by the message, by the betrayal staring her in the face. Later that night, after Michael had gone to bed, Lena couldn't bring herself to sleep. She tossed and turned, her mind replaying the discovery over and over again. The text from Samantha. The intimacy in the words. The hidden part of Michael's life she'd never seen. She couldn't shake the feeling that something else was wrong, that there were more lies buried beneath the surface. She decided she couldn't wait any longer. She had to know the truth. Lena waited until the early hours of the morning, when Michael was deep asleep beside her. She crept out of bed and tiptoed to the study. His computer was still on, the screen glowing softly. Her heart pounded in her chest as she hesitated, staring at the keyboard. She had never been one to invade his privacy, but now, her only option was to dig deeper. With a shaky breath, she opened the web browser and navigated to his email account. She had no idea what she was looking for, but something told her that there was more to this than just a text. She needed confirmation, something concrete that would explain what she had seen. She scrolled through a few emails, most of them work-related. But as she scanned further, her eyes froze on an email with the subject line, "Tonight." The plan. Her hands went clammy as she opened it. The email was from Samantha. It outlined their plans for the evening, describing a hotel room reservation and specific details about when and where they would meet. The language was even more intimate than the text message. Lena's vision blurred. She felt like the floor had been ripped out from under her. It wasn't just a one-time mistake. This was a full-fledged affair, a betrayal that ran deep, hidden behind years of lies and deceit. She felt a rush of emotions, anger, confusion, heartbreak. She wanted to scream, to confront him right then and there, but she couldn't. Not yet. She needed to think. She needed to process this before she lost control completely. Lena closed the laptop, her hands shaking, her mind reeling. She wasn't sure how long she sat there, but eventually, she made her way back to the bedroom. Michael was still asleep, oblivious to the storm that was about to hit. The truth was now out in the open, and there was no going back. The life she had known, the perfect marriage, the perfect family, was a lie. Michael had betrayed her in the worst possible way. Tomorrow, everything would change. But for now, Lena lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her heart heavy with the weight of the secret she had just uncovered. Part 3, The Confrontation. The sun had barely risen the next morning, but Lena had already been awake for hours. The discovery had shaken her to the core. Every memory, every conversation with Michael, now felt tainted. How had she missed it? How could he have lied so convincingly for so long? She stayed in bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for Michael to wake up. Her thoughts were a whirlwind, and as much as she wanted to confront him right away, she knew she needed to be sure. She needed to hear the words from his mouth, to understand just how deep this betrayal really ran. When Michael finally stirred beside her, the quiet grogginess in his voice was a stark contrast to the storm raging inside her. "Morning," he mumbled, reaching for her hand. Lena barely responded, her mind miles away. "Morning," she managed, her voice soft but distant. She felt like she was on the edge of a precipice, staring into the abyss, knowing that what she was about to do would change everything. Michael sat up, rubbing his eyes. "I've got a meeting this morning, but we'll have dinner together tonight, okay?" he said, already beginning to pull himself out of bed. Lena took a deep breath. This was it. She couldn't keep pretending everything was normal. Not anymore. "Michael," she said, her voice steady but strained. He turned back, his brow furrowing slightly. "Yeah?" he asked, sensing the change in her tone. Lena's heart pounded in her chest, but she knew she had to speak her truth. "I know about Samantha." His face froze, the color draining from his features. For a brief moment, he looked as if he had been caught in the act, unable to hide the guilt that flickered across his eyes. "Samantha," he stammered, clearly caught off guard. "Lena, what are you talking about?" "Don't lie to me," she said, her voice cutting through the air. "I saw the texts. I read the emails. I know about the affair, Michael." For a moment, there was silence. Michael stood there, paralyzed, unsure of how to respond. Lena could see the wheels turning in his mind, but there was no excuse that could fix what he had done. I never meant for you to find out this way," he said, his voice trembling. "I was going to tell you. I just..." "No," Lena interrupted, her words sharp. "You were never going to tell me. You've been lying to me for months, maybe even longer. You've been seeing her behind my back, sneaking around, all while pretending everything was fine between us. I deserve better than that, Michael." He took a step closer, but she held up her hand, stopping him. "Don't come near me. Just tell me the truth. How long has this been going on?" Michael swallowed hard, avoiding her gaze. "It started a few months ago. It was a mistake, Lena. I didn't mean for it to go this far." "A mistake?" Lena's laugh was bitter, the sting of betrayal too much to bear. "A mistake? No, Michael. This wasn't a mistake. This was a choice. A choice you made every day while I was here, trusting you, loving you, building a life with you. How could you do this to me? To our family?" The anger in her voice surged, and she could feel the tears threatening to spill, but she held them back. She wouldn't cry for him. Not anymore. "I never wanted to hurt you," Michael said, his voice faltering. "It just happened. I don't know what I was thinking. I thought I could fix things before you found out." Lena shook her head, disbelief flooding her. "Fix things? You think you can fix this? How can you fix something like this? You've broken me, Michael. You've broken our family." The words hung in the air, heavy and final. Michael opened his mouth to say something, but Lena couldn't listen to more excuses. She had heard enough. "I need space," she said, her voice trembling now with the weight of everything she was feeling. "I can't do this anymore. I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again." Michael's face crumbled. "Lena, please. I love you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you." Lena's heart broke at his words, but the love she had once felt for him was gone. The man standing in front of her was a stranger, a man who had hidden his true self from her for years. She had been living in a lie, and the truth had shattered everything. "Don't," she whispered, holding up her hand again. "Don't say you're sorry. It doesn't change anything." She took a deep breath, her hands shaking. "I'm done, Michael. I want a divorce." Michael stood there in stunned silence. He couldn't even find the words to respond. He just stood there, defeated, as Lena made her way to the bedroom door. "You have to leave," she said, her voice barely audible. Now. Part 4, The Divorce. The days following Lena's decision were a blur. The house, once a sanctuary of love and laughter, now felt cold and foreign. The kids sensed the tension, but they were too young to understand the gravity of what was happening. They asked why Mommy and Daddy were arguing so much, why Daddy was always in his office, why Mommy seemed so sad. Lena tried her best to keep up appearances, to shield them from the growing chasm between her and Michael, but the truth was unavoidable. She had made up her mind. She couldn't live a life built on lies anymore. She couldn't live with someone who had shattered the trust they had spent a decade building. Michael moved out, taking only a few things. He was quiet, remorseful, and begged her not to go through with the divorce, but Lena knew it was too late. She had already felt the fracture in their marriage long before she uncovered the secret. The affair, the lies, the betrayal. They had all been symptoms of a much deeper issue, one that could never be fixed with apologies or promises. As the divorce proceedings began, Lena found herself in an emotional limbo. The anger that had propelled her to make the decision was fading, replaced by an overwhelming sadness. She mourned the loss of the life she thought she had, the life she had carefully curated with Michael by her side. There were moments of self-doubt, moments where she questioned if she had made the right choice. Was there a way to repair the marriage? Was she being too hasty? But then she thought about the texts. The emails. The betrayal. And she remembered why she had made the decision in the first place. She met with her attorney several times, navigating the complexities of child custody, property division, and alimony. Michael was cooperative in some ways. He didn't fight her on the kids, and he agreed to a fair division of assets. But the emotional toll of it all was undeniable. She hadn't expected it to be easy, but she hadn't anticipated just how draining it would be. At night, after the kids had gone to bed, Lena would often find herself alone in the kitchen, staring at the empty space where Michael's things used to be. The quiet was deafening. She would sit with her thoughts, trying to make sense of it all. She had spent 10 years loving him, trusting him, building a life together. How could everything have changed so quickly? How could he have thrown it all away? But as time passed, the anger gave way to acceptance. She stopped blaming herself for the cracks in their relationship. She realized that she hadn't been the cause of Michael's betrayal. He had chosen to step outside their marriage. He had chosen to break their vows. She was not to blame. One evening, a few weeks after Michael had moved out, Lena sat down with her kids at dinner. Ethan, now 9, and Lily, 7, were both quiet, sensing the shift in their home. She knew it was time to talk to them, to explain what was happening. "Kids," Lena said gently, placing her fork down. "I need to talk to you about something." Ethan looked up, his big brown eyes full of concern. "What's wrong, Mommy?" Lena took a deep breath. She had rehearsed this moment in her head 1,000 times, but it still felt surreal. "Daddy and I aren't going to be living together anymore. We're going to get a divorce." There was silence. The weight of the words seemed to hang in the air, and Lena could see the confusion on their faces. "Why?" Lily asked, her voice small. "I don't want you and Daddy to not live together." Lena's heart ached. "I know, sweetie. I don't want that either. But sometimes grown-ups have problems that they can't fix, and it's better for everyone if they live separately." Ethan's brow furrowed. "Is it because of us? Did we do something wrong?" Lena shook her head, her eyes filling with tears. "No, you didn't do anything wrong. You are both so loved, and this has nothing to do with you. Mommy and Daddy are going to be okay. It's just that sometimes people grow apart." The kids didn't fully understand, but Lena could see that they were processing the information in their own way. They were too young to grasp the complexity of the situation, but they could feel the shift in their world. The promise of normalcy had been broken. As the divorce moved forward, Lena focused on creating stability for her children. They stayed in the house, and she made sure they kept their routines. She spent time with them, playing games, helping with homework, and reading bedtime stories. She was determined to shield them from the hurt, to give them a sense of security despite the changes. But the emotional toll of the divorce was starting to catch up with her. Some days, Lena felt overwhelmed, exhausted by the weight of it all. She had to be strong for her children, but who was there for her? Who could she talk to about the hurt she was carrying inside? One evening, a month after the divorce papers were filed, Lena met up with her best friend, Rachel, for dinner. Rachel had been her confidant throughout the whole ordeal, offering her unwavering support. "You've been through so much," Rachel said softly, her hand resting on Lena's. "How are you really doing?" Lena sighed, taking a sip of her wine. "I'm just trying to move forward. Some days, I feel like I'm drowning in all of this, and other days, I feel like I'm finally starting to breathe again." "You will breathe again," Rachel said with a reassuring smile. "You're stronger than you realize." Lena smiled faintly. "I don't feel strong right now. I feel lost. I don't even know who I am anymore. For 10 years, I was Michael's wife. I was part of a family. And now, I'm just me." Rachel reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You're not just you, Lena. You're a mother, a friend, and a damn good woman. This is just a chapter in your life. The rest of your story is still unwritten." Lena's heart swelled with gratitude for her friend's words. She had been so focused on the pain of the divorce that she had forgotten to look ahead. The future was uncertain, but Rachel was right. This was just a chapter. She was still writing her story. Part 5, Healing and Moving On. Months passed, and while the pain of the divorce didn't completely fade, Lena began to find a sense of peace. It wasn't immediate, and there were still days when the weight of everything felt too much to bear. But she was learning how to live without Michael, how to carve out a new life for herself and her children. She had thrown herself into work, immersing herself in her role as a marketing director. It wasn't that she was trying to escape from the reality of her situation, but the distraction helped. She was good at what she did, and the feeling of accomplishment that came from a successful campaign or an impressive pitch was a small but important victory for her. Slowly, her confidence was returning. She was reminded that she had built a career on her own, that she was capable of more than she had ever given herself credit for. Her relationship with her children was growing stronger too. They had adjusted to the changes in their lives, though there were still moments of sadness. Ethan had begun asking about Michael more often, wanting to know when his father would visit. Lily had become more withdrawn, her bright smile dimming at times, as if she could sense the emotional turmoil Lena tried so hard to mask. But Lena continued to reassure them, offering as much stability as she could. She took them to therapy to help them process their feelings, encouraging them to talk openly about what they were experiencing. It wasn't easy for them, but Lena knew it was necessary. They were resilient, and despite the heartbreak, they were finding their way. One Saturday afternoon, Lena took the kids to the park. It was a rare moment of relaxation in the midst of their busy lives, and for the first time in a long while, Lena felt a sense of contentment. She watched as Ethan and Lily ran around, their laughter filling the air, and a sense of pride washed over her. She was doing this. She was creating a life for them that was filled with love, despite the pain of the past. As they sat on a bench, Lena's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, expecting it to be a work email or a message from a friend. But when she saw Michael's name on the screen, her stomach dropped. She hadn't heard from him much since the divorce was finalized. The occasional text to check in on the kids, but nothing beyond that. Lena had assumed their communication would remain limited, as they navigated their separate lives. But now, here he was, reaching out. With a deep breath, she tapped the screen. "Lena, can we talk? I know things have been hard between us, but I need to apologize. I never wanted to hurt you. Can we meet?" Her heart clenched as she read the message. The words were familiar, laced with guilt, with sorrow, but they didn't hold the same weight they once had. Lena had heard these apologies before, and though she had wanted them so badly in the past, now they felt hollow. She sat with the phone in her hand, the decision weighing heavily on her. Did she want to talk to him? Did she need closure? She glanced at her children, playing happily together. They were her priority now, and she had promised herself she wouldn't let Michael disrupt their peace. The past was behind her, and even though it had shaped her, she was no longer defined by it. Lena took a deep breath and typed her response. I don't think meeting would be helpful right now. I'm moving forward with my life, and I need to keep that space for myself and the kids. I hope you can understand. She hit send and put the phone back in her pocket, a sense of finality washing over her. It felt like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders, and for the first time, she felt a true sense of independence. She wasn't angry with him anymore. She didn't need his approval, his apologies, or his presence in her life. She had everything she needed right here. Her children, her work, and the quiet confidence that came from knowing she was capable of navigating life on her own. A few weeks later, Lena received an unexpected phone call. It was from her old friend Rachel, who had been a steady source of support throughout the entire process. Rachel's voice was filled with excitement as she spoke. Lena, I have an idea for you. What do you think about taking a weekend trip to the coast? Just you, me, and some time to relax. I think you need a break, something just for you. Lena smiled, her heart swelling at the thought of having some time to herself. The idea of a getaway, without the constant responsibilities of motherhood or the shadow of her past hanging over her, was exactly what she needed. She hadn't taken a break in years, and the thought of spending some time in a new place, away from everything, felt like the perfect opportunity to reclaim herself. That sounds perfect, Lena said, her voice full of gratitude. I think I need that more than anything right now. The weekend trip with Rachel was everything Lena had hoped for and more. The coastal town was peaceful, with sweeping views of the ocean and the sound of waves crashing against the shore. For the first time in a long while, Lena felt a deep sense of peace. The breeze was refreshing, and she spent her days walking along the beach, reflecting on everything she had been through. She realized just how much she had grown. She wasn't the same woman who had married Michael all those years ago. She wasn't the same woman who had believed in their perfect life. She had found strength in herself that she hadn't known existed. She had learned to forgive, not Michael, but herself, for allowing herself to be defined by a relationship that had crumbled. When Lena returned home, she felt different. Lighter. The burden she had carried for so long seemed to have lifted, and though she knew there would still be challenges ahead, she was ready to face them. She was no longer afraid of what the future held. She had everything she needed inside of her to create the life she deserved. Her children, too, were adjusting. They were happy, and though they missed their father, they were thriving in the stability that Lena had worked so hard to create. She was a mother, a professional, and most importantly, she was a woman who had learned to love herself again. The road to healing had been long and painful, but Lena had emerged stronger than she had ever been. She was ready for the next chapter of her life, one that was all her own. And as she stood at the door of her home, watching the sunset with her kids, Lena realized that, despite the heartbreak, she had come out on the other side. The future was hers, and she was ready to embrace it.